Welcome to episode 55 of Discourse in Magic with Morgan Pierce. This was a great episode. Morgan has been a friend of mine for quite a long time, and this episode was about, limiting beliefs. So making sure that you are telling yourself the right story of what you're doing and that you truly understand your value, and alongside that, pricing, which is super important and confusing and difficult for a magician. Yeah, scary. And also some quick tips about how to handle finances as a magician. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
Jam-packed episode.
Yeah.
Like, you really got to listen up to this one because he speaks clearly and he speaks fast.
Quickly, yeah. Two quick things to mention. The first is our course, Fantastic Gigs and Where to Find Them, is a free course starting May 1st. If you want to sign up, learn how to get into a new niche, break into a new market, that's where to do it. So discourseinmagic.com/fantastic gigs, that's number one. And number two is a warning. Remember that viral video that went out of that guy on the news and his babies were running in the background and his wife pulled the kids out of the room? That's a lot like what this episode was. There was a crying baby somewhere in the background. So if you hear crying, just know that it is coming from the episode.
But if you hear screaming, like legitimate adult or even small child yelling, take your headphones out and have a quick peek around you.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Make sure
it's
all
check.
good. It's worth a check. Probably just the baby. It's a pretty grown-up sounding baby, but you never know. Safety first. Without further ado, here we go with episode 55 with Morgan Pierce.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah.
My name is Tyler.
And we are here with a very good friend.
But we mean it this time.
Yeah, we sometimes we say very good friend and someone we don't know, but this time it's someone that I know very well. I spent a couple years getting to know living in Kingston, and he was somewhat of a mentor to me for a couple years, and I'm very excited to have him on the podcast. And enough ooey-gooey stuff, here he is, Morgan Pierce. How are you, Morgan?
You're so sweet, Jonah. Mentor, you have very low standards of mentors, but thank you very much.
Legit.
Good. It's good to be with you guys. Thank you. It's Jonah, you're a wonderful magician, and Tyler, we're both. I'm very fortunate to be chatting with you guys because it's not often I get to speak with great magicians all the time. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thank you so much. And one of my favorite things about you is you're knowledgeable about many more things than magic, and I think that is what makes an awesome person. Guest? No, but really, just like people that are so mono. I don't know. I'm such a loss for words.
Yeah, it's
right
early.
Now.
It's early. You just finished your coffee.
Yeah, but
15 minutes into this, you'll be on point.
But anyways, people that all they do is magic, and they're not. It's good that you're well-rounded, and that your advice is actually good. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast to chat about some stuff.
I think a lot of people that are good at magic are just good at being human beings, and I think that's the secret to being successful in magic is to be interesting. And interested, right? So making sure you can offer people something that's more than just a fairy tale story of a card trick or a presentation, but something that's genuine and authentic with what you do.
Yeah, especially when you do a card trick and you're like, hi, my name is and it was once three queens who were named Sally, Billy, and Philly, and you're like, fuck off.
Yeah, so, you know what? That's exactly, I think, the exact opposite of what I wish I saw more in magic. I think too often I'm seeing people that are telling fairy tale stories, and they're not taking the opportunity to present who they are in magic, which is unfortunate because, if you think about it from a plot standpoint, people are too concerned about making fairy tale stories, and it's no wonder people say, "I wish my kids were here" when they see something,
right.
Because it's childish. But if they can come across authentic with what they're doing and make it about the experience and connecting with the people, that's the advantage of close-up magic that we always really put aside. When we start presenting and stop communicating, we're not actually doing ourselves justice in being successful in what we do.
I always joke because magicians love saying the phrase like magic is a form of communication, and then they stare at their hands and they go, anyway, so I put this card in the middle of the deck and it comes back to the top, and then I put it 3 ways in the middle of the deck and it comes back to the top, and then I put it in the middle here, put it in the middle, okay, and it comes back to the
It's
top.
how I express myself. Your card's not in the middle anymore.
So the way we usually start the podcast is, how did you get into magic?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a very common one too. By people who are like, how did you get? And you get bit in a weird way. I'm dating myself now, but I mean, when I was young, there was no internet really. It was like when I didn't know something, I had to go to the library, and magic was not. There wasn't a magic section there. So I really learned the old school way, which I appreciated. When I was 12 years old, I saw a guy do a French drop, and it blew my mind. But the cool thing about it was after asked him to repeat it about 20 times, and he did. He asked me a couple days later if I wanted to learn it. And most people, when they see the secret of magic, it turns them off. But for me, I was so blown away with how something so devious and clever fooled me, and I knew that I was a smart kid, so if it fooled me, it would fool many. And I got hooked. And and after that, David Blaine's specials, the very first one, it motivated me to get to know
Pretty
more.
aptly timed, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. And I found browsers dead of magic, and we all know how they are. The Jeff and the shop there is amazing, and it made it very easy for me to start learning what I wanted, and I became addicted. Reading, and my mom used to catch me shuffling my deck in my room at 3 a.m.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
But I mean, it's you guys, everyone who's ever taken up magic, it's the same story. We saw it, we fell in love with it, and it became a weird addiction. And but I think it attracts very unique people, and that's what I think. When we look at what gets you into magic, that is the start. But the next level is taking the opportunity to find a way to really communicate what you're doing in your life, and bring that all together into a medium that is unique and special, right? Because
it's so interesting. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I hate to say it's cliche because, people say, why do you do magic? And people say, because I want to see the look in their face. But the truth is, that's for sure true. But I think that for me, it's like I want to really experience what it is to be in the room and meet people in a way that's genuine. And what I mean by that is we put up walls a lot of times when we meet people, right? We have our front of who we want people to see us as. But when you are introducing magic, people are so intent in what they're experiencing, they don't realize they're revealing personality traits of who they are. And so you really get to see people in a really raw moment. Maybe they feel threatened, maybe they feel excited. I had a guy last night say that he felt child surprise. He used the term child surprise, which was interesting, right? Because we talk about this wonderment. And
I heard an interesting idea. I don't know where it was. It might have been from the Jerks, but I don't know. And it was that pretend that when you're performing magic, what you're trying to do is catalog the responses that you get, right? So instead of you trying to aim for a response, you're sort of exploring the variety and you're trying to be interested in how different and fantastic it is the way that people respond to this.
Exactly.
And you trying to paint that picture. So I totally agree.
And the more you perform, and the more you get to see the kind of personality styles will come at you while you're performing, you can actually be prepared and take them on a journey that's very unique. That's how you turn a hater of magic into a lover of magic, or someone who really loves it into a colleague where you're actually out building the room for yourself, right? Because they're promoters for you.
Yeah.
And so in business we look at different social styles to be successful, but in magic we actually look at either you enjoy magic or you don't sometimes, or we consider you a heckler as soon as you say something that interrupts my plot. And I think that's not necessarily accurate. I think what we need to start looking at is how do I intertwine my personality and seeing what people give me into a journey that allows me to take them into something and build that relationship to make it so your magic has an impact as who you are. Because magic is the medium. It's not the message. The message is you, and you're using something to share something very special. It's definitely the memorable part. But if you're not memorable as a person, then you're just a magician. And we all hear those guys. And I think I take a pride in the fact that if someone's seen me, said I saw Morgan perform magic. Where I hear often when I'm performing, I saw a magician in Toronto or something. And I say, well, do you remember his name? And they say no.
Right.
And I think that's, that's a really bad job of the magician, maybe, right? And not maybe introducing himself, maybe, but just performing tricks and not having a chance to connect on a level that allows them to build a real authentic relationship, because that's in our business and close-up, that is the opportunity to make money, and it's the opportunity to have people really love what you do, right? People don't talk about always the tricks that David Blaine does. They'll talk about the magician, or they'll talk about something they saw, right? And it's unfortunate, because we live in a really crazy world where the best magicians are never seen. Right?
Yeah,
And
I think you've done your job if someone says, I know a magician, he's a good friend of mine, and you're like, oh, how did you meet? And they're like, oh, he just showed me magic, and now we hang out, right?
Right. So I think you've done your job as a magician if they really, I think in the past, if someone comes to you and says, oh, I saw magic before and I'm seeing it again, if they enjoyed it before, if they had a good experience with it, that's great. There's nothing worse than when we saw someone say, oh, I've seen magicians before. But you can use that to your advantage, because that's another personality style. So as soon as someone's like, oh, magic, well, then the bar set so low.
Yeah, I love it. I love when...
Me too. Yeah.
I actually really enjoyed performing when I was really young, because people would underestimate what I would do, and they would like fall off their chairs. I remember, I mean, it's still the same thing. Like, people are like, oh, that's good for kids. I'm like, lay it on me, bucko. Like, I want to take all that up front so that I can really knock your expectations right off.
Are you okay?
Do I sound terrible? I don't know. I'm okay.
Knock your expectations right off.
Whatever. I don't know. I make up my own little phrases.
I will knock your expectations out with magic. Oh my gosh.
So let's dive in sort of into the topic. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of what you did with magic, and then sort of what you do now? I know that they're wildly different, but I think that they have an overlap that I think is valuable, and it's sort of going to lead into today's topic.
Magic was really like something I stumbled into, right? Because it was this hobby that I found when I had free time, giving up other parts of my life to make time for school. And it was kind of like my thing. And then it kind of stumbled into a career. I didn't ever think like, I'm going to perform magic to pay my way through school. It kind of developed. I mean, I did go through that. It was that phase where I was just doing it for me. And then you get into that phase where you're starting to share it and practice it. And then my mother kind of encouraged me, like, you should probably be doing something with it. You're spending a fortune on books and videos and stuff, and you're like, it's a pretty big investment to be in your room performing magic for yourself. And I was like, that's probably true, right? Yeah, magic is sharing it, not hiding it. And so I got lucky. I ended up working my first restaurant gig because believe it or not, I was showing the web. Remember the web, where the trick with the spider on the back of the hand?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was performing. I was kind of saying how much I hated it. And I called a server over to show another magician, and it turned out she freaked out so much that brought the manager over, and he actually said, would you perform here week by week? And I was like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, why not?
And so that turned out to be, I started realizing, there's money in this, and opportunity to do stuff that you love, which is great to get paid for your hobby. And at that point, I told my mom I was going to go to school, pay my way through school, university at that point, because I was just done college. With magic, and she said, Morgan, how are you going to charge for magic? What are they going to charge? What are they going to pay you? And I said, well, I think I can ask for about $350 an hour. And she said, nobody will pay you that. And I was like, and she was right. They paid me $500, $1,000, $2,000. And I was able to set my talents and my skills and my ability as a businessman to good use to pay my way through school and leverage that working for big companies. So back in university, I was working for everything from Fortune 500 companies all the way down to maybe like, the wedding reception, which I actually love wedding receptions. They're a lot of fun. Everyone's happy. And so I paid my way through school with magic there. And then when I graduated, it was kind of a segue from graduation to finding work. And I started working for Employment Ontario, working with eventually leaving that to help people with money. So I work now as a financial planner by day. And it's weird because I've been trying to put the magic down probably for the last half a decade. And but when you love something you're good at, nobody lets you put it down. So I started using it as ways to present when I give talks. I've used it for just business. It's a way to break the ice. I mean, last night I just did a networking event, which they paid me to be there. And I really just want to be in the room because there's a bunch of successful people that want to make a difference in our community. So magic turns into a really great way to, as a business tool, but really early on I used it as a way to get somewhere. Now it's a way to get your foot in the door somewhere. So it's very different, but the same, right?
Absolutely. And I think there's, in just that story, you sort of gave a ton of examples of how magic benefited you and how you used it, like both to make money, like straight up, but also that gave you enough lessons to say, like, yeah, I could teach people about how to handle their money and, charging things and saving up money and holding up, because you did something as, I don't want to say ridiculous, but yeah, as ridiculous as magic to pay for your university,
Right.
and you were
Right, which
able
a lot of
to.
people thought were crazy. That was like, how are you going to pay your way through school with magic?
Right,
And then-
and it is crazy, and like no matter what you say, there must have been some level of hustle that you were doing to get enough of those bookings, at the prices that you're talking about, right? So it's not like you like.
That's a great segue, because I think this is important for people who are listening who are trying to figure out how to connect that. So my first 2 years of school, I was working 1 or 2 restaurants, and I was really scraping to get by. I was making, probably back then about, I think I was charging between $50 to $60 an hour, working a couple hours a night, anywhere between maybe working a Friday, Saturday evening, right? That was what I considered busy. So you're bringing in, maybe you're making $800 to, $1,600 a month.
Yeah.
When you're trying to pay your way through school, that's not a ton of money when you're paying your own rent,
Absolutely,
paying your own expenses. But as a student, it's enough to get by. And it wasn't until my third year that I met a guy that was he was actually a busker, an award-winning busker that went to the same school. And he saw me and he said, "I've seen guys on the streets do this. You're way better than any of these guys. Why are you not booked all the time?" And I had a lot of limiting beliefs. I didn't want to say no. I wasn't trying to promote myself. There was a lot of things a lot of fear-based thinking that I was like, I don't know. And then when I said, "I don't want to say no," he said, "That's exactly what you want to say." And it kind of clicked something inside of me. And by my third year, it turned my business around. I was working 3 restaurants. I always had a private function once a week, if not every 2 weeks at the most. And I really made the most amount of money at that point in my life. And in my third year of performing, newspapers picked me up. I started becoming more aggressive because social media wasn't as big back then. I mean, it was just starting to get off the ground when I was in school, and it was Facebook, but like Twitter and all that. The opportunities that young magicians have now to get themselves out there. But the problem is, I don't think they're doing it in the right way. They're promoting the tricks and not themselves. They're not promoting the relationship. But we'll get back to that maybe. Anyhow, so being able to like start to change first my mindset that I could actually ask for what I wanted, and then I read a Harry Allen book that. It's not Harry Allen. You know what? I'm trying to remember. It was a kid's magician. And I want to say like Richard Ginn maybe. Anyways, the point is, the book said there's this old magician. He was charging $25 an hour back in I think the 50s or 40s, and it was like big money back then, right?
Yeah.
And he was trying to figure out a way to squeeze another dollar out of his. But he was booked every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and he was charging $25, making $75 a week, and he was thinking loot bags or something. And then his son came in. He said, "What are you trying to do?" He said, "I'm trying to figure out how to make more money." He said, "Charge $50." And he said, "Well, they might say no." He said, "Dad, if 2 of them say yes and 1 of them say no, you make $25 more a month or a week." Yeah, and you're working. You get a day off now. And it was that mindset of understanding the numbers that really helped. There's also a great book by Ian Quick, and I can't remember the other author's name. It's called Highway to Success. They're a magician. I think there were lawyers that were magicians, or vice versa, right? Like, whatever you want to claim them as. Magicians would claim them as magicians, and lawyers would probably claim them as magicians. But but at the end of the day, they have a whole book on how to track and process. So I started learning more about how to track my business. What I was doing. So in other words, if someone's hired you before, call them next year.
Right.
How are you generating your leads? And or how are you promoting yourself? So this book gave me some of the tools I required that I didn't really have, which was basically just an Excel spreadsheet. And it's not hard to replicate on who booked me, how much I charged. So a lot of times I think magicians go out and get gigs, but they don't actually keep score. And I think keeping score is a large part of being successful in your magic business, because it will help you understand, well, what did I do last year? I think it's funny, most magicians, we call it show business. They might be really good at the show, not so good at the business. Or they're really good at making the money, but they're not so good at the show. And that's, I know the 3 of our pet peeves, and many other magicians probably listening, is that, a guy that wants to go out there and charge $25 for an hour because he learned how to do invisible deck and has a thumb tip.
Right.
So and he's like, my tricks will get better, I'll charge more. And then, so that's always, but there's 2 sides of it. There's 2 sides of the showing the business. And I think if you can focus on the business side once your show's there, then there's no reason you can't be successful and try to do what you want. And so
how do you like, what's your approach to thinking about pricing now, and what was your approach when you first got out? Like, what would you suggest someone do who has never charged for a show before and wants to know what to ask for?
That's a really deep question, actually. Thanks for asking. The first thing I look at, I ask people now is, even then I was young, I was like, well, what is my show really worth? And I had some advice from, we always stand on the shoulder of giants. I had some really talented guys out of Toronto tell me, one time someone gave me some advice about if you're going to charge $500, you have to be worth $1,000. You charge $1,000, you got to look like you're worth $5, kind of thing. So always make sure what you charge, you're bringing value. And it's not about the quality of your tricks, but what do you look like? Are you wearing a nice suit? Are you wearing like jeans and a t-shirt? A lot of guys, street performers and stuff like that, they look like they're on the streets, which is fine. That's what they're doing. They make good money. They're buskers. But if you're going to be in a restaurant, how are you dressing? If they mistake you as the manager, is that what you want? If you're a little bit too casual, and that's really part of your character, but it's also part of your business. So the first thing is, how much are you worth to do nothing? So ask people, if I was to pay you an hour to stand still and do nothing, what would you want financially? And so they might say, nothing, which is a horrible answer because that means your time is worthless. But let's say they said $100. So I said, okay, so you think you're worth $100 for nothing. So now you're bringing a talent that's very unique and special, and if you're good at it, what is that worth? And so it's such a hard thing to answer because I'll ask people, they say something like, what do you charge for an hour? I say, well, I charge $500. And they say, well, I can't charge that. Well, what could you charge? Well, $250. I'm like, well, okay, what if I said you could charge $275? Well, I could do that. What about $300? Maybe $325. No way. So there's something about numbers that we start to get to the point where we don't feel we're valued, and that could be a limiting belief. Often I have made people have hired me instead of other magicians that have charged less because people sometimes pay for value, and there's a reason. Yeah, I mean, is a Rolex watch worth the price compared to a Timex, or and some people might argue the way that it's constructed. Well, I think that's the same with a magician. But I think at the end of the day, and if your show is worth it, you have to decide what your price is. And I wouldn't use your own mindset about money to price yourself. I would probably look, what's in the community? Two, remember, when you charge your fee, it's very hard to change your prices when you start establishing your business. If you work in, say, a restaurant gig and you're charging $25 an hour because you're new, and then time goes on and all of a sudden you want to charge $50, how do you justify that to the manager? Well, my tricks are better now.
Right.
So it's hard to justify because we're so, you can't, if you're...
So a good piece of advice that I got was of your first gigs, do them for free in order to get your photography and videography, and then start charging real amounts, right? Because that way there's no confusion, right? You'll say look, usually I do it for this, but I'll do it for you for free if I can bring my video and photography team,
right. So that promo stuff.
Exactly, and so you're never like, oh, this time it's $50 an hour. Oh, this time it's $500 an hour. And they're like, what the fuck happened? You're like, oh, I got really good.
Yeah.
I think to take that to another level, maybe, because I think that advice is not horrible, but it could lead people to think there's no value to what you do. Because if you're good at something, you should do it for free. So one little twist on it to add value might be that you put on a charity performance.
Right.
That you ask people to donate and you bring in the cameras for that, and now you're doing something for your community or something of that nature. Because as soon as you start doing free work, I always tell people, free work's easy to find, it's paid work that's hard to find. Because everybody wants a show for free. So if you do one, you might end up doing 30, or the least people will ask you to do it. So, but early on, if you're going to do a free show, give it a reason. Give it a purpose. It might actually even bring a little bit more value. Because at the end of the day, prestige is very important for what we do. I hate to use that the word term prestige because everyone thinks of the movie, but prestige of our work is important. There's a reason someone will pay. Bill Malone gets like $25,000 or $50,000 from Coke for the same amount of time we might get a few $100s. Well, but Bill Malone builds it up, and he has a reputation. He's earned to charge that kind of money, and so meanwhile, but we can perform the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does somebody who I put myself in the shoes of myself 5 years ago when every 3 or 4 months a friend of a friend would be like, you do magic, right? We have a fair coming up. You do magic, right? We have and how I could end up saying to myself, oh, I can charge $500 an hour. I know that there's people that think are $1,000 an hour, or maybe there's people right now who have done a couple dozen birthday parties, and they're just in what world would I be able to do that? And especially, you mentioned what you were charging not that many years ago for somebody in university. And I have, and maybe this is a limiting belief, but I have this feeling that you need to have a little bit of gray hair or a little bit of something to you to be like lecturing at corporate businesses, about, like you can't be a 19-year-old saying like, oh, I charge $2,000 to like do a magic trick and talk about, like, to me that's bonkers, right? So is that a limiting belief, or is there like
I think it is.
I think it could be a limiting belief only in the sense of how are you preparing. So, for example, age. We know age is irrelevant. Mark Zuckerberg proved you can be successful at a young age. Lots of people are young successes. The problem isn't your age. It would be, are you polished? What are you presenting? Is there value? I mean, value comes from all different ages. I learn from people twice my age, and I learn from people half my age. And if I think any differently about that, that's a limiting belief on what my opportunity is to be around others and grow. For me, when I was young, I wasn't always old and gray. When I was in university, charging what I was charging, people working for bigger companies and stuff, you're bringing value, and they like the young guy that's coming in and having fun. It brings up an energy level. So I wouldn't look for the reason why you couldn't do it. I would start to ask yourself, what can I bring that's value, that's different to these people? And I'd also say, when you're doing, like, we talk about charging, people say, well, you can't charge $500 for a fare, or you can't, whatever. The point is that, yeah, you can't. But when you say yes to the wrong thing, you're saying no to the right thing automatically. And because it means you're willing to sacrifice what you want to accomplish for the quick buck. In other words, the chief cause of most magicians' misery is sacrificing what they really want for what they want right now, which is to say yes to a show, be working, and make a little bit of money. And when I started saying no to jobs, I started making more money. And that's why I go back to that story about the $25 magician that turned into $50. When you can price yourself at a level that is realistic. And I'm not saying go charge $500. I'm not saying charge more or less. That's going to be a personal decision. But it needs to be a number that motivates you. Because sometimes we both know when we've done 3, 4, 5 shows in a 2-week period, and you're working restaurants and private parties afterwards, and you're burnt out. And sometimes you just don't want to deal with the joke, hey, can you make my wife disappear one more time? Sometimes just knowing that you're getting a good paycheck at the end of the night is like motivation enough to get there and get started, and then you never know what will happen, right? So I always say, like, the people motivate me to make a difference in when I'm sharing with them and have a great experience. But then when I'm exhausted, sometimes the money needs to motivate you. And if you're not charging what you're worth, then you might not be able to be a strong performer either.
Absolutely. There's this mindset, I keep repeating it on this podcast, but there's this mindset from this internet guy that I follow very closely called Pat Flynn. And the concept is, he says, like, your income is sort of the metric that measures how well you served your audience. Oh, and I really like that. I really like that because I think that, especially if you believe that you're charging what you're worth, then you leave the event or the tour or the week or whatever, and the income tells you honestly how well you were able to serve, because they felt hopefully happy both before and after they paid you that money,
if they feel like it's a deal, if they felt like, we got you for a steal, and at the same time they paid a good dollar, that's the win. Right. And there's an exchange of energy that occurs in business, and if any time that energy is unbalanced, in other words, because think about how much energy we bring to the table for an hour when you're performing for a group. Like, you're going in there high energy usually,
absolutely,
right? And so if there needs to be an exchange of energy, that comes in 2 ways: the audience rising their level up of appreciation and gratitude and engagement and response, and the other side is how they compensate you.
Right.
And so that's because payment is a form of an energy exchange, and if it's unbalanced at any point, then that's not healthy for your business or yourself. And because they're going to either feel like you don't value yourself, which you could be busy all the time at lowballing, but then really, what are you accomplishing for yourself?
Right. It's a race to the bottom, and there's no.
Some of the biggest shows I booked were against guys that were charging lower amount of money, and I always like to remind them. Some of the things I say on the phone were like, they're like, wow, you're a lot more than the other guy. And I was like, well, you know what? Some people like hamburger, some people like steak, but you can't get steak for the price of hamburger. And
one of the things that you said to me a couple years back, and I don't even remember if you actually said this to someone on the phone or if you just thought it, but knowing your audacity, you probably said it. But Like this woman, you asked some like outlandish fee. She didn't want to be at the event, and the woman was like,
Yes, I remember.
The woman.
Yeah,
so why don't you tell it?
Yeah, sure, of course. I was actually locked up at the camp that week. I was supposed to go to and help at a magic camp, and a lady called for a show, and I thought I would just give her an outrageous price, thinking that I didn't want to say no because they've seen me perform before. They're nice people, and she said, "Wow, that's a lot more than we expected." And I said, I understand, stupidly, but at the same time, it was an educational moment for me. I said, think about what you're spending on other areas of the event, like your food. What do you think people are going to remember in 10 years? What they had to eat that day or the magic that I performed for them? And she instantly said, you know what, you're right. And she said, I'll call you back. And she called me back in less than 10 minutes and booked the show. And so I had to make some arrangements to get there because at that point, you're not totally But, it really taught me something. It's like people, one is that, that we can't be afraid to ask for what we're worth and don't be afraid to maybe stretch it out a bit more. It's okay to get a no sometimes because that's going to test your boundaries on how you price yourself. And think about it. If you ask for a show and you ask for 400 and you get no, and you ask for 400 again, you get no, try 350 next time. Try
I saw this awesome thing online where it has like, it says like 2, 4, blank, 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 blank. And you have to guess what the pattern is. And if you know anything about math, it could be different things right now. They could be multiplying, they could be adding, they could be...
Yeah,
and the thing is you only learn what the pattern is when you get no's, right? You won't know what that pattern is. You have to try something and be like, oh, that's wrong. Try something else, input it, press enter, okay, that's not it, right? So you learn from when people say no, especially when you're tackling market specific, which is what I recommend to any magician, just because like it's so crazy to be like, hire me anywhere, right? So Correct. Because I recommend market,
Jonah. That's hard.
Pardon?
Understanding their market is very challenging for a new magician because they don't know where they fit, especially if they're young, because they don't identify with anybody.
Absolutely. So one of the ways to learn about pricing is to find where people say no to you, right? Like, if you don't know where people say no to you, you don't know how much you could be charging, but also you don't know what the margin of what you could be delivering.
Correct.
Is, right?
You
like,
could be undercharging. You could be.
You could also be wildly under delivering, right? Like you could think to yourself like, oh, I just go and I put on a show at this corporate event. Like I mean, I when I go do it at a birthday party, it's $300. So I guess, I don't know, $200 more. It's on a stage with a big mic, but it's like, no, you're delivering wildly different material, content, impact, and with that comes the ability to charge more and, find out what that ceiling is.
Yeah, I think as you get older and experienced, and you here we are once again talking about not being afraid to fail in your magic and putting things out there and being really aware of what your response is and then making decisions based off of what you experience. I think, again, don't be afraid to fail at pricing. Don't be afraid to fail asking, and that's a really big part of again finding that target. I like the pattern analogy, Jonah. That's a really great analogy.
The what? Sorry, the
pattern.
The number pattern. Yeah, you have to.
It was honestly. There's a link, and I'll find it. I'll include it in the post of this podcast because it's really fun. I mean, I already gave away the punchline, but if you want to use it for someone else, because it's really really fun. Just sort of on the same time. Sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay.
Go ahead.
No, it's a whole. I was gonna go into a whole thing. It's all right.
Okay, I was just gonna say whatever. Aside from pricing, you are a financial advisor and you understand sort of how the magic money income sort of works. Do you have any advice non-pricing related to a magician who is bringing in money, is it like you should really be saving, or is there like...
this is like, edging on professional advice. That does drive me crazy, so thanks for opening up that. So it's very interesting because I only got the interview to work as a financial planner because it said magician on my resume, and the guy never interviewed a magician. And you got to be, I'll tell you, I actually brought magic to the interview, and you got to be pretty sure, like, you all know that I did magic in the interview. And I think it played a big part in the opportunity because I didn't have the experience early on. So now they train you, and I've been doing it for a decade now. And I always said that entertainers are a great market because we're always working, we're performing. But the problem is that we're cash flush. We get paid cash, we get paid checks. We don't track. In other words, it's the business side. So the first thing, it's weird, this is boring advice, but the first thing I tell anybody who's starting to make money is you need to claim as much as people try to hide money when they run businesses. You should claim as much and properly plan, but you should buy disability insurance. Think about it, guys. Your body, your ability, if you're working full time as a professional, that is your income. So if you get hurt, well, think about it. If you're sick, how hard is it to perform? And if you get hurt, which 1 in 3 Canadians will be disabled for longer than 7 years, you're not going to be able to maintain your lifestyle. And so I always say, people think about savings and investing. Disability insurance for a magician would be, or any entertainer, I think would be the primary thing, and get that from a provider that's reliable. And so outside of that, paying your people, there's business expenses, right? So we always say like, oh, I bought my magic books and I can write those off. But you need to pay yourself first, and that's a classic line. But you need to, whenever you have a show, I make a predetermined percentage of what I'm going to put aside for retirement or for purchases, and I put that aside. So in other words, you're going to run a business. Remember, it's not all profits, because you have your expenses of your show, which are usually small, like a deck of cards and travel. But you also have if you, it depends how you pack. But it also depends on you should actually be paying yourself. And so decide beforehand. That way, when you get the money, you're not just spending it. I think magicians, entertainers, like servers, for example, they get paid a lot of cash. They get paid a lot, and they spend it, and they're not. They make a lot more money than most people, but they don't do the right things with it. So putting some aside and maybe just say I'm going to put 10% of every show, because when you're getting different, I get 400 this show, 1,000 this show, 500 this show. We don't always say so people like pay off debt that way. They say I'll pay off whatever I can. Well, you have a debt to pay yourself, man, and it's either retiring, because we won't. How many? You see a lot of older magicians, but how many really 60, 70-year-old magicians? That's why this year, like turning 40, you start to see like my magic career is actually limited in some ways. Because it's when you're young and it's cute, but when you get to be like 50 or 60, I actually wonder, unless you look like you're young, like some of my friends do, you might look like the creepy old guy that's like, hey, pull my finger. So I don't know. As I get older, I'll let you know how it goes. But I think it starts to give me more gratitude for the chance to perform too, because time on my side of being the fun entertainer might be limited. But health is the biggest concern, and that would be the advice I'd say is protect your income. It's your most valuable. Your ability to work is your most valuable asset. So put that money aside and protect yourself against the uncontrollable events of illness or of disability. Sorry. And so and outside of that, just try to save a percentage out of it. And from the other business side, realize you have business expenses, and what I mean by that is be smart with where you're allocating your money towards things like marketing and stuff. And that's what I love about magicians nowadays. Like, we had to pay for websites. Websites are cheap now, and online presence can save you a fortune. So business expenses are becoming smaller. It's almost easy as a magician to operate your business relatively at low expenses.
One of the best pieces of advice that I got was that tracking has more impact than has a ton of impact. I don't even remember what that sentence is. I don't know. I was hit by a car this morning, but tracking has a lot of impact. So for example, there's a diet called the Flash diet, where all you do is you take a photo of everything that you put in your body, and it has been proven to be wildly successful at reducing weight. There's another one where all the diet is you draw a graph of your goal weight decline, and then every day you weigh yourself at the same time, and you just track where you are by compared to the graph. And there's no other mindset, you know what I mean? There's no other anything. And just the daily tracking, and the comparative and the, that knowledge and that seeing every number actually written down and tracked actually makes an impact. And it ends up, although the point of this was sort of what smart things can you do with your money, it also just does you a ton of benefit, because you see where you're at and you can see where you're going.
Winners keep score, and I think even though it's about money, you can't make decisions to make more and what to do with it if you don't track. And we are big believers. We always joke. We always talk. 74% of Canadians don't even keep a budget, and I bet you many people here listening don't keep a budget. Well, how do you know how many shows you need to get in a month if you don't know what your minimum costs are to live your life? And that's one spot, right? If you want people say the goals, I want to make $100,000 a year, for example. Well, do you need that much? What's your minimum cost? How do you get to that? What's overachieving? And that helps you make decisions. So, for example, we talked about pricing, and people might say, "Well, I tried to charge $400, but I got a no." Well, how many no's did you get? How did you ask? How did you present yourself?
Right.
What did you say? Because if you're not consistent with those things, then you don't know how to change what you're doing. It has to be, I would say 10, 20 times replicating to make a decision. And I think 100%. If you're those things, I love the idea of taking a picture. I might do that for myself, taking a picture of your food, but tracking in a simple way, and then deciding what are you tracking. Are you tracking what? Like for example, I tracked what my fee was because sometimes prices can vary based off the event. I tracked where it was, who contacted me, and how I closed it. In other words, did I have to sell them or were they eager to buy? Right? And then, because you can learn stuff from that. For example, if people are eager from you and you said $300, they say, yep, sure, when can we sign you? You're like, what you just found out?
You're like, damn it.
Exactly. I didn't charge you
like,
that.
Crap.
I didn't, right. And so that's an opportunity next year to come back and maybe increase your price just by a little bit and slowly, creep it up over time. If you're repeat events, and when you do contact them and say I'd like to perform for you again this year, if they say no, why did they say no? Are you brave enough to ask? And secondly, are you seeing that you're not getting a lot of repeat business? Because I always joke around, lots of magicians can get shows, but there's not a lot of magicians I meet that I would want to see more than once.
Right, and yeah, for me, I was just gonna say, for me, like a lot of my clientele are people that hire me year after year after year, and that's not again like tapping.
High five.
God
yeah.
damn it, no,
okay,
it's
no.
not. But it's to say that like
he has 3 people
like,
just rotating.
I don't like to those people. I don't send email blasts. I send them a personalized phone call or email every year, chatting, hey, how are you? How are your kids? I know their kids by name, and their family by name. I know where they live. If I'm in their area, I call them. These are people that I've built a relationship with, and they hire me year after year. And you know what? My price gets higher, and they're okay with it. One of them joked with me earlier, a couple of years ago, and he was like, don't make your price too high because we won't be... So, he almost knew that my price was going to go up, and he knew that I was underpricing myself, and he was just like, we're going to keep hiring you, and you're going to keep getting more expensive, but just don't get too expensive too fast. and I was like, oh, shit, I should be charging more.
I think a lot of magicians should really, if they're doing what you're doing and they're getting their repeat business, keep building that rapport. And what I mean is send thank you cards, and if we treated our show business more like businesses, and we showed gratitude for the opportunity. The first thing last night when I performed, I was in the middle of the act and I stopped, like I was in between tricks, and I just took a second to thank them for how amazing an opportunity it was for me to be in the room with them.
Wow.
And so and they almost felt like that was felt like an end of the show. They're like, no, thank you. But you know what? Showing gratitude. And then we moved on to more stuff, which is cool because that's kind of like an encore performance for a magician, right? If you thank them instead in the middle and then at the end, then everything you do after that. And I always save the better material for the second half of that opportunity to thank them, rather than just thanking them at the end.
And what's cool is that there's a crowd of people that are in this super emotional and enthralled. They're watching an amazing show, and then you're turning the spotlight on the people running the event, right?
Correct.
So all the praise that you're getting is now put on your client, which makes them even happier, and they
are the heroes.
They brought you happy.
Yes, Tyler. They brought you in. You're the show, but buddy, there's no show without them saying yes to you. And so that gratitude goes a long way, and it's sincere, because the person that says yes at the door, and that's a really great tip for people, is that if you get someone that says yes to you in a group, you better do your best to make them the hero, because they paid for you. They brought the experience.
And think about when you leave, people walk up to the host and they go, wow, the magician was great. Thanks for bringing him in, dude. Wow, he really...
And be able to accept, because they'll come to you and say, you made the night, or how wonderful it was, everyone's raved about you, and to be able to bounce between humility and appreciation is a very important thing. I never blow it off because it's an important compliment, but you never take it too much. In other words, don't get arrogant, which is not really the right wording. But I mean, we have to be humble and appreciative in that situation, because that's going to lead to more opportunity. Because that's, you cannot emphasize enough. I mean, it's very cliche, but that we are the magic. Is I think did Scanio say that? We are the magic. Was that? Anyways, and the truth is that we are there. We are the people they hire. We are the relationship, and that's how your shows can get more expensive, because they're hiring you. They're not just hiring a magician. They're not just hiring an entertainer, right? If you think about it, I mean, comedians are the same way. There's a reason why some guys can make millions of dollars on stage a year, and other ones struggle in comedy clubs. And it's not about it's not just about the quality of their jokes. I've seen some pretty funny guys that no one knows about. I've seen a lot of horrible guys that no one knows about too, or comedians. But at the end of the day, they are selling a concept, a relationship, whatever it is that makes them valuable. Louis C.K. right now, the reason why he's so popular is because how authentic he is in the frustrations of life.
Yeah.
And I think
he really connects and is a genuine person, even though his show is totally scripted and storyboarded and all that. You feel this genuine, like, oh my God, he's me. He's just living my life.
Well, his stand-up is exactly like his show was based off his life. So there is a large part of authenticity, even though it's scripted, that he's writing from experience. And I think that's an exact example of bringing that into your magic too, is that if you can bring those pieces of authenticity and all that in there, again, that's going to bring out who you are in your magic. And I always try to make sure that people are learning something. And what I mean by that is when I present a trick, I want them to understand a little bit more about what our life is on our side. Like, because it's a weird thing we do, right?
For sure.
We take for granted small things like you can rip up a card. Like I always thought it was funny when a magician ripped up a card as part of the trick, but didn't have real motivation behind it, because to the audience member, you've wrecked an entire deck.
It's like crazy.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's like, who does that? You're insane. But meanwhile, in our perception, it's like, I got a zillion of these at home. I don't care about this one.
Yeah, and you're like,
why
else would I rip a card as not to just put it back together?
Why isn't that communicated? Because that's our side of the coin. Why are we not communicating things like that when we present and talking about our side and talking about our own personal experiences? So if you're into...
That's actually kind of what I want to ask you about, is how would somebody who, like you said, a lot of young magicians struggle with self-identity and knowing who their market is and who they should be speaking to and the connections that they need to make. So what advice can you give to someone who's like, I really am just trying to figure out who I should be performing for and what type of performer I need to be?
So I convinced them to try to get away from magic, because magic, I love magic theory, I do, and I mean that's why I love you guys. I mean, magic theory is so important in especially today's magic, where we're watching videos and learning things at a much faster pace, but with no context. But when your life is very much the same, when you look at who you are, when you want to bring authenticity, well, it's hard to be authentic if you don't know who you are. So personal development books, very cliche but strong one that's been around about character development is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
It's one of the best books ever.
Yeah, and a lot of people say that, and I don't disagree. It stand the test of time. So books like that you can go and seek more about who are you. Like if you don't know who you are, which at a young age that's part of your journey, then how are you going to offer an authentic situation when you don't know what that looks like? So start to find ways about what do I like, who am I. So I start to think about what are my values, what do I appreciate in the world, what do I hate about the world, what do I want to experience, what do I think is like ultimately success in communicating with somebody. What do I want them to learn about what I do, who they are, what can I share my experiences that are the human connection. That's why, again, it goes back to I love kind of looking at the comedic aspect of it, and I don't mean as in a funny situation, but the topics they talk about and why and how that connects to humans. We can be using that in magic in a not necessarily comedic way, but in a way that people can understand. So for when we're talking about playing cards, talking about human things like gambling is a great thing, but about the feelings and the emotions that you're dealing with in gambling and the journey. And that's why when I see someone do Triumph properly and they seem very frustrated that somebody messed up the deck. But how does anyone relate to that? Because how many times has anyone taken a deck from someone playing cards and shuffled them face to face? But if they compare it to something at work, like has anyone ever pushed your pile of papers together the wrong way and you've had to reorganize them or messed up your laundry, whatever, you can start to correlate that to things that are like they can identify with. And now it's not a corny story, but like a metaphor for a real life situation. And when you start to do that and start to experience other things outside of magic, you can bring more to the table. And when you do that, then you become an interesting person. And now when you become an interesting person that has these different experiences to draw from, now when you start meeting people, it becomes a lot easier to network and connect and meet the right people because you're someone worth meeting. You're someone worth spending time with. Because you're bringing something unique and a perspective to the table that makes people like you. And I think the biggest success for myself in magic has not been my ability to perform a sleight perfectly, for example, but it's been my ability to perform good magic, and I always strive to make sure that I'm doing the best I can with my techniques and my methods and learn magic. But on the other hand, I've always strived to create an authentic experience that doesn't feel like a magician. And I hate to say that because I respect what we do, but we both know that when you introduce yourself as a magician, the cliches that pop into people's heads are not prestigious
Absolutely.
or flattering. So, and I think the reason is accurate. But when you say you're a magician and people say, you know what, like you say, you're a magician, but it's more than that. This is an experience for us. This is this, because you're becoming a chance to connect at a level that's personal and fun. And yeah, sure, we still present corny and it's hard to have a connected experience performing sponge balls. but at the same time, how are you responding and communicating and interacting with somebody that gives off being genuine and authentic? So in other words, to be more successful at your business, become a better person, and to become a better person, love yourself more, learn more, educate yourself more, and experience life more.
I'll share a little story about I don't even know if you remember this. I don't know if I ever told you this, but this was the first time that I ever met you. And it was a very strange day, and what happened was I went to Browser's Den. It was when it was at the old location. Must have been 10 years ago or so. And you were doing a small little lecture, and I didn't even know. I was just wandering into the den that day. And I sat down for the lecture. I don't even know what happened. So I sat down, and I bought your lecture notes, and I still have them. It's called like something at the falls, magic at the falls.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fantastic.
You can send those back for a refund.
No, it's fantastic. Well, I don't even know if I paid for them. So,
I don't think you did.
I don't think I did either.
I had to give them away.
Okay,
that's awesome.
But the reason that I brought that up wasn't just to say that we had a really cool backstory, but it's to say that one of the things in there was, and I don't know where this has come from, and obviously not the first to visit it, but I thought that it was so fantastic that you said, like, let's position our magic for the questions that people are going to ask us.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's been a
right
theory. Yes.
And the thing about that is it gives such and it really exemplifies the point that you were just making, is sort of planning your magic audience first, right? And saying, like, sort of having the mind to say, where is what I do gonna go? Well, I don't know, the first 10 times I did it, people keep saying, well, I don't want to play poker with you. Well, boy, should I have a trick for that,
right.
Because otherwise I just have to awkwardly be like, yeah, I wouldn't play poker with me either, or whatever.
We have to respond with a bad joke rather than an authentic moment. And that's, I think that's great you brought that up, Jonah, because there's a great backstory on that. So when I was a young magician in my early 20s, I got frustrated with, we had a board in the back room of the restaurant I worked at that we would check mark either if they said, can you make my bill disappear, or can you make my wife disappear, and we bet who would say what more. And we would all check the board when we heard it. And it gets frustrating after a while that you're hearing these cliche jokes. And then I was at camp, and a magician out of Ottawa, we were talking about that, and I was saying how frustrated I was with people that I heard the same jokes over and over again. And he said, so let me get this straight. You present a fantasy world, and then when they buy into it, you get pissed off at them? And I was like, yeah, I never thought of it that way before, right? That's really, I said, that's a great perspective. And I said, so what do you do? And he said, I invite them in. I want to make my wife disappear. Where you want her to go? Where you want her to go? And I was on like, keep talking that way, she might disappear on her own. And now you're engaging them in on it. But then the weird thing is that as you start to recognize that what you're putting out is a fantasy world and they accept it, David Williamson said later, when I spent some time with David Williamson when he was from Ohio here in Toronto, and we went after hours to a pub, and one thing he said is the game of when you're performing magic professionally for a long period of time, it becomes a game of tennis. But the thing is that you know where you're going to hit the ball because you hit the ball in the same spot every time as part of your presentation. And because you've done the same things for so long, they'll only react in so many ways. There's so many degrees of freedom that they're going to respond that are predictable. Right. And so you know where they're going to hit the ball back on your side, so you can already be there. And you can do the same thing over and over again, replicating this authentic interaction, which is really authentic in intent, but experienced in what's been said. In other words, you know what they're going to talk about to a certain extent. So if you know, for example, when you're in an elevator and you say, how's your day today? They're going to probably bring up the weather, or they're going to say good, or you know what I mean? Like there's not only so, unless they're crazy and you know, you're not getting, which is not the expected response. It's going to fall within that, and you can go from there. So using that for our magic was the logical conclusion, because when he said that, I thought, well, then why wouldn't we start to like write out? I started writing out all the things I heard the most, because we all hear different things, but they're similar. In other words, we probably all heard, "Can you make my bill disappear?" at a restaurant, or we've all heard, "Can you float?" after someone saw David Blaine or something. Right. We all hear these same things, but again, they can also be unique to who we are and what we want to perform. So the question is how do you steer the conversation from an authentically planned standpoint, which is weird to say we're planning something authentic, but how can you kind of steer the conversation without pushing it in an unnatural direction based off what they say? How can you be prepared? And I started listing what tricks I could start doing that would allow me to do that, and which gave, when I had a set, because I go with a set in mind, but then if someone said something like you said, like about the poker, I knew I could say, oh, you know what, here's something that illustrates what we're talking about. And then that seems, even though it's another staged effect that I knew I was going to have, it gives this real like in the moment feel, which actually gives them the experience they're looking for, which is an actual experience.
There's also that fantastic theory, I don't know whose it is,
and where to find them,
because I'm unqualified, but there's a fantastic theory where it's like, if you say, you know what I'll do? I'll make a sandwich appear. And then you make a sandwich appear, it's great. But if someone's like, you know what would be cool? A sandwich. Right. And then you're like, here it is. Like, that's sort of what you're doing by cataloging all of the things that you know that people might say.
Right.
And
you're
being
prepared for the ham
for
sandwich question. That's exactly.
Right, because you're fulfilling their wish, and I have this thing that I've been experimenting with now. It's very fun, and I recommend people try it if you're looking for a challenge. I do a lot of table works. I do workshops, and I put the deck on the table, and I say to them, what would be a cool thing for me to do with this deck of cards? And it's crazy because, you know what? Barring from make it levitate or make it vanish, you know, which already I should have better things for, the things that they ask me to do are often within my wheelhouse, you know? And I know this is sort of on a tangent to what we were talking about, but it's just to say that, like, thinking about what your audience wants is the quickest way to being valuable, you know? And being valuable is the quickest way to charging, you know, what you want to charge. And I think, you know, oftentimes I'm working with, like, teens, and, like, when I get to say to them, yo, you guys have seen card tricks before, right? And they're like, yeah. And I say, so what would you like to see happen? Right? And,
yeah, that's great. That's great.
And I'm able to oftentimes deliver to them exactly what it is that they want and sort of get that sandwich thing. And I think, you know, the better, like we talked about before, you know, the better you can serve your audience, and whether that's by knowing what they're going to say, or knowing what they're going to appreciate, or knowing how exactly to deliver them value, or whatever the case may be, the more that you can charge, because the more that you'll be worth. Because like you said, you're now a tailor-made suit and not I'll come in and do your birthday party. It's 40 minutes. It's the same show again.
Right. And it's more fun for you because then you're not repeating the same stick over and over and over
Absolutely.
again. It gives you longevity of your career that you're allowing yourself to be in the moment too. I mean, that's the strength of close-up, right? We are allowed to engage. So make sure your magic can engage. And that also helps you with your effect selections too. Because some people don't know what to perform. Well, what you should be performing is something that allows you to express yourself, ask the right questions, back up things. Like, I'm already starting to think, after this whole this whole interview, I'm going to chat with you about some ideas I have when someone says make the deck disappear or this or that. I got some ideas that you can have fun with.
Good.
And that's the cool thing about the creative process is that, you know, why do we have to be creative? Let's let the audience challenge us to be creative and serve them at the same time, which is fun.
Before we wrap up, one of the things I want to ask is if you have any advice towards a young budding magician. I know we sort of already talked about what you should do with your finances and how to price yourself, but you know, money is such a complex issue for magicians, both how to manage it in a realistic way and how to, you know, price yourself and just how to, you know, understand. And you mentioned it sort of in the beginning of your story, you know, often mothers and fathers want their kids to get jobs so they can understand the price, the price of the dollar value, and then their child becomes a magician, and their first job is charging $400 to perform an hour and a half's worth of walk around magic at a fair, and all of a sudden they didn't learn, they don't know the value of money, or to put it in a better way, they have different beliefs of the value of money. And I truly think that as an entertainer, I think I'm able to think of money in a very different way than someone who is working a minimum wage semi-full-time job, right? Like, I'm able to really think about things like, what am I worth per hour? Like, what is it worth for me to do nothing? Or what is it worth for me to spend a day putting out 20 emails? That's my day. That doesn't take 8 hours, but it'll likely book me a gig.
Right.
And that's worth what the day was, right? Like I'm able to come up with things like that. So do you have any other piece of advice for somebody who is just getting into this and like maybe what I was trying to say was that like it's uneven, sometimes you get paid a lot of money and you're young and you have no idea, or sometimes you're older and you end up people telling you you're undercharging, and like it's a crazy world out there. So I'm just wondering.
It goes to the theme of a lot of things we said today, which is like, if you're young, don't be afraid to make mistakes in your business and in magic, and have fun. At the end of the day, you're not, the money will come if you have a great time. I've never seen a happy, hardworking magician unsuccessful. So keep learning, keep growing, keep asking other people. I mean, that's why these things like this webcast is here, because you have an opportunity to learn and grow through others' mistakes and experiences. And I would just say the most important thing you can do is don't forget why you got into magic in the first place. It's because you wanted to have fun and you loved it. And if you can remember what it was like to not know everything, that will make you a better magician. Because that starts to numb us, right? We start to know everything. We know all the secrets and all that. And some magicians I find can be a little bit like, I don't want to say arrogant in the sense, but there's that pride that comes with, oh, I know the secrets kind of thing. And it's more amazing when you can kind of still look at things as best you can through their eyes, and understanding that will make you a better magician. Understanding how they see it, what's their experience, and participate in that. Not by being fooled by your own magic, which would be naive and crazy, but by actually just appreciating what they're going through and seeing it through their lens. Your magic will get better because you're also amazed by their amazement. And so I say, keep having fun with it. The money will talk as time goes by. I was never concerned. It's funny. I was never concerned about how much I made. I mean, pricing is always a question you ask, and I challenge you to charge a bit more and see what happens. And if you can't charge more, I would challenge you to ask yourself why you think you can't. Start to write down the list of what would it take to charge what was more. Let's say and try to figure out what the going rate is in your town. If the going rate, say $300 an hour, why can't you charge that? What's preventing you from? And then see if you can find help in getting there if that's important to you and working full time. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you have a great time and you put in good work, the money comes. And I think that's what
absolutely.
And I blame magic for all the successes I've had outside of magic. Like I don't think it's successful. I would not be successful in my relationships, my work, my ability to, because when you're working in a job where you have to meet people, it's great.
Sure.
Magicians are fearless, right? We have to be. We're put in situations
Absolutely.
that most people can't handle. We're public speakers that have to perform a craft that is perfect every time, or we're not good. And so it says something a lot that if someone's taken on magic, it says that you're a special kind of person. And that you need to allow yourself to shine. And the best way to do that is have fun, keep growing, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and then decide what that kind of, you'll see the value you bring because people will tell you, and then make changes as it goes. And I hope you make a ton of money, but I hope it's more importantly you impact a ton of people in magic, and they have the experiences that they deserve in magic. Because the more people that do great magic, the better it is for all of us.
And that's the thing, and the overlap of impact and income, and how you feel that if you get joy out of delivering an awesome tailor-made experience because first they react well, second they and everyone thanks you and are well impacted, and third, you're well compensated, then you will be motivated to pursue doing that more and pursue getting better at it and delivering more value, and then, you know, pushing that cycle of being worth more and encouraging you to do it more, right? So
I do want to say, sorry, go ahead, Jonah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say it's worth feeding into that, into helping deliver value to the audience, because like impact breeds income, and both of those two things sort of make you want to do it more, and it helps breed your identity. And
I just want to, something popped in my mind that I felt, because we're talking about business and money and you know, doing their job well, but I also want to tell people, like, don't rush. For a young magician, when they get into magic, they rush. It's like they want to be pros too quickly. Think about it from a doctor perspective. How many years do they go to school, and then how do they work before they say that they're practicing, you know, as doctors or lawyers or teachers? You know, the point is that if you want to be a professional, take your time. You know, take a couple. I mentioned it briefly, but I spent a couple years in my room only showing friends when they came over to visit and a couple people at school the stuff I was working on, till I felt like I was proficient enough to start actually going out and trying to perform shows. But I meet kids that they pick up a few videos or whatever, they watch some things on TV, and they get a business card with some, you know, rabbits or playing cards on it, and now they want to charge money. And I think the problem isn't what you're worth at that point, it's that you didn't take time to become valuable. And so take your time, slow down, have fun with magic, learn it, become knowledgeable on it. And, you know, that's one thing I love about you guys. When I met you guys both, you know, you could tell you spent time early in magic, and that, from an older magician, I always appreciate someone that's been through the same journey as I did. That they took the time to read the books and understand the knowledge and put in the, you know, work on their past a bazillion times before they put it in front of the public. But that's the best part of being a magician, really. It's the stuff we do on our own that we get to practice and work on, that we know that one day we'll present. The advice I would say has nothing to do with the money or that. It's just slow down, enjoy magic for what it is. Because when you start performing, you guys know, when you start working professionally, it's so much harder. You stop doing any of the fun parts. Progression becomes challenging. You're trying to balance making a living and bringing in new material and getting much time to work on it. And I found out, you know, I spent so much time building the show that by the time I ended up running a business, it became so much easier. And I just say, spend more time early on the show before you launch a career, and you're going to have a much more successful time. And that also gives you the time to work on yourself. So work on your magic, work on yourself, and then go out and put it out there and see what people think. And then don't be afraid to charge what you think you're worth, because you've now created the value before you entered into the business.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic advice. One of the things that we do when we get to the end of the episode is we each go around, and, you know, because we spoke for about an hour, it's very hard. You know, people are probably washing dishes, you know, driving their car, you know, washing their car,
masturbating,
yeah, whatever, while they listen.
I'm masturbating right now, actually. I just don't.
Right.
Yeah. So are we.
So yeah. So the thing, get off my lap, dude. So. What we like to do is we like to pull, all three of us, one nugget from the episode that we thought was sort of particularly valuable and something was a major take-home point for us.
I wasn't really paying attention to what we were saying, though, guys. That's not fair.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll message you one super quick so you've got what to say.
Okay.
So for me, one of my favorite things that you often talk about, outside of this episode, but I was glad that we came up to it in this episode, is limiting beliefs, because it's one of those things that, like, unless someone reminds you that no matter what you do, you're looking through lenses that are rose-colored, like you need to be reminded always that your experiences have painted the picture of what you think about the world. Yes. And sometimes that picture can present sort of glass ceilings. Your life turns out to
be what you believe it to be. Yes, for sure.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. So I think that it's so important to just remind yourself that, people less cool and less rich and of a different world and worse off than you have done better and more, and
right,
and it's there's nothing really like stopping us, and the things that are there, we can work around it. We're all, if you're listening to this, you're a magician. If you're a magician, you're a problem solver. So you can do some working around. Tyler?
There's something you said right at the beginning of the episode. I hope it doesn't get cut out because it sort of happened before we dove into anything. But you said that you have to be interesting and interested when you're performing. And I just thought the addition of the interested was super valuable. Like, it's such a concise sentence that I think has a lot of impact, because I know so many performers who are just doing the same patter over and over again. And though the pattern might be interesting, you can tell they genuinely don't care, and the people are like trying to get past their performance in order to enjoy the magic, which I mean is a huge, huge drawback from your performance. And the other thing I thought was really interesting, just two little concise sentences that I liked, was saying yes to the wrong gigs is the same as saying no to the right ones. And I just, those two things I think are so together that, they're worth keeping in the back of your mind.
Good points. And I love, what I love the most when you guys talked about patterns and about what we were reinforcing is, for all those things we just talked about, is failing forward. In other words, don't be afraid. Looking at, instead of the pattern number thing, it was like, don't be afraid, take guesses and to make decisions based off of tracking. So tracking and looking for the patterns essentially, and not being afraid to fail forward and making mistakes and learning from them is so valuable from a young, as you grow in your magic or in your life in general. So, it's really awesome today, guys. I just want to make another little quick point, is that all the stuff we talked about is not just about magic, it is about life in general. And so, and it goes back to what we said before. If you want to be a great magician, live a great life and build value around your life. And these are some great ways to do it. So I want to thank you so much for the opportunity again, guys. It was awesome talking to you.
Thank you so much. I always love talking to you. You always deliver so much value, and at such a fast pace.
Yeah.
So it's good. It'll keep them on their toes. The last thing is there anything that you want to pitch, tell the world, let them know about? You can just tell them about a TV show you're watching, or you can tell them about something great that you're a part of that you want them to be a part of.
Honestly, no. I'm very boring.
Lead an interesting life.
Here's the problem. The problem is this: I don't perform magic with advertising anymore, because people come to me, and so I don't advertise at all. I don't have business cards anymore. That's what happens after 20 years, right? And I'm not allowed, because of my financial planning stuff. I had to put down my public speaking career for a while, so there's nothing there right now. So there's really nothing to promote, guys.
Is there anything that do you have any PSAs about anything,
any topic
to the world that you've got now millions of magicians' ears to your voice? Okay, so is there anything that you want to tell them?
Yeah, let me think. Yeah, you know what? Stop magicians. This is the one PSA thing. The one thing I'd say that I would like to not so much promote, but to share as we close things off, is that being a magician can be very challenging, because we view ourselves through the eyes of the people that approve us. In other words, we're seeking gratification from an outside's perspective. And the biggest, most valuable advice I got, because I don't know if you guys had this, but you work in a restaurant, you hit 10 tables, and 9 of them think you're a god, but 1 of them thinks you're average, and it ruins your night.
Yeah.
And for me, as you perform more and more, seeking that external gratification can be very hurting on the spirit of what you do. And you need to learn to appreciate what you're doing and the best of your ability, and loving yourself. And I'm sorry, guys, my little guy's crying in the background.
That's okay. It reminds me of the video that went viral with the guy on the meeting with the kids running in the room.
Yeah,
that's what I think this interview is a little bit like. It's
lost my train of thought.
Dragging the kids out by the feet.
Torturing him upstairs as we speak. Have you finished beating our baby? Okay, good. Anyway, so anyhow, to go back to what I was saying. So the one thing I'd say is, from a PSA perspective, is learn to love your magic as much as you hope other people do. And not take what they say so much to heart, because we're looking for feedback. And the biggest change in my magic that took probably longer than I wish it did was I read some stuff by, I think, Michael Skinner said, I want you to like my magic, but I don't care if you do. Because I'm doing, because he's put time into it. And if you've put time, and that's the problem, the more time and effort we put into our magic, the more afraid we are to put it out there, because we're worried about being judged. And I think if you can stop worrying so much about being judged, because people don't know. They don't know what you've been through. They don't know what you're doing. They don't know. And you take feedback from a chance to grow, but not so personal that it hurts your magic. You'll become a better magician when you're solid in the confidence of what you're doing. I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying don't grow and work and practice and take feedback to get better. I mean, nothing actually makes me happier than when someone comes up and says, your magic's amazing. I just want you to know that trick you did, I saw this, but I was on a different angle. I just want you to know. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you, because I'll fix that. But if no one, because no one says anything, man, it's hard to get better. But if some magicians might get crushed when someone says, "I know how you did that," and you say, "Oh yeah, how?" Well, that's ego speaking. Just say, what did you see, and then make changes. Because we're not trying to be. We want to be perfect, but like I've heard so many great legends that are a bazillion times better as a magician than I hope to be. Say that when you work for real people, you're going to make mistakes, and it's how you handle that. And that only comes from a confidence that's inside. So, but my biggest concern is from a kind of a PSA standpoint is magicians, because we, like all entertainers, beat themselves up. And my concern is the Robin Williams situation, where we were all heavily impacted when he took his life. But and there's a situation of a man where the whole world loved him, but he didn't make himself happy. And I think it's so important as an entertainer that you value yourself and that you appreciate what you're doing to the point where you can grow, but not be heavily impacted by the one table that says you're one level above a mime. Or we've all had those people, and so it gives you more confidence in knowing that you're going to do the best you can, and you get to have more fun and engage and not be so concerned with the feedback, positive or negative. And then you're really presenting something special because you're presenting your true self. And again, that goes back to the authenticity piece we discussed earlier. So just keep loving yourself through your magic, man, because we're very fortunate that we can take 52 pieces of laminated paper and a couple coins and some props and walk into a room and get paid well and have a great time and create an experience that is unique and authentic and memorable.
Absolutely. And on that note of loving what you do, I heard this very interesting idea very recently. I think it was Gary Vaynerchuk, but I don't remember who. And he said, how can you expect anybody to love your business more than you do? And I think that it's the same for your magic, and it's like, how could you possibly expect your audience to love your magic more than you do? So you need to love it that much, because otherwise they're not going to love it more than you do, right? They're only going to be able to love it as much as you love it. So
great point.
I think that's
so well said.
Super awesome. Morgan, thank you so much for being on this episode.
Thank you, Tyler.
Really, I think it has an incredible impact, and I think that you dove into both a lot of the practical stuff and a lot of the mindset stuff that set people on the journey of asking themselves why they think they're priced why they are, and how they can raise that. So thank you so much. And of course, big thank you to everyone at home, and a reminder that you can spend 1 hour working on magic without working on where to put your pinky in the deck. So props to you on that. That's a big accomplishment. And we will see you all next Thursday on Discourse in Magic.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Well, there you go. Episode 55 with Morgan Pierce. I hope you learned something about the value of what you do. I think that is so important, and that's one of my favorite things about Morgan, is he helps us see the value. Last thing is a reminder for fantastic gigs and where to find them. It starts May 1st, and I want you to be a part of it. Here's 3 reasons why. 1, it's going to help you get booked in the niche and in the market that you want. That's number 1. Number 2, you're going to have a whole community of people doing it with you side by side. And number 3, we're all in this together. I was going to say number 3 is May 2nd is Tyler's birthday. So if you want the easiest gift in the world to give him, all you have to do is sign up for fantastic gigs and where to find them.
I have simple needs, and it's basically your email address.
That's right. He has very simple needs. These are nice needs. Oh, needs.
With a D.
Yeah, with a D. You like the D. Okay, yeah, fantastic gigs. I need the D. Okay, that's right. Fantastic gigs and where to find them. DiscordMagic.com/fantastic gig.